Добрый вечер все, кто смотрит нас сейчас. У нас в гостях совершенно невероятный человек, сын великого скрипача Оскара Шумского. И я хочу задать ему вопросы, на которые вы не найдете ответ ни в Википедии, ни в каких-то биографиях. Может быть, немножко провокационные вопросы о его отце и о том, как сложилась жизнь его отца, и почему так мало людей на свете знают об этом человеке и об этом великом скрипаче. Okay, this is Eric Shumsky, the great son of great father Oskar Shumsky, one of the greatest violinists of the 20th century. And in my opinion, Oskar Shumsky was underestimated. He should be on the level of Jascha Heifetz and be, like star like Jascha, but somehow, right now, if you ask young generation people, they barely can tell who is Oskar Shumsky. So I would like to ask you about the life of your father and what makes this happen, that we lost somehow him in our, perspective of it.
You know, it's a good question. My father was an incredible genius, as most musicians know, but he was a very interesting character. He wasn't just a violinist. He was a fantastic violist and a wonderful photographer. He took black and white pictures like you can't believe, and I would ask him, what are you thinking about? He said, in music, I find that there's more relation between black and white, the contrast between all of a sudden black and white. I can explain music sometimes more beautifully through photography than I can just straight through music. So you ask about why isn't he as famous with the average person, let's say, as Jascha Heifetz? First of all, the world is not a fair place in terms of, what's just isn't always accepted as such. You look at the great composers, and in Bach's time, I think Telemann was more famous. My father also didn't like the business aspect of, concerts, meeting people afterwards. He was a pure artist and a musician through and through. If you asked him about the music, oh my gosh, he was so engrossed in it. But if they said, oh, Oscar, there's a reception after, please come and have a drink with us. Oh, he couldn't stand this. So there you go, right there already is the, for instance, Isaac Stern, it was, saying bad things about colleagues. Not one of my father's favorite people, for sure. But he was a wonderful violinist. I'm not going to say he wasn't, but he was wonderfully versed in political, designs. So he wouldn't miss out on some kind of a connection here, because this is going to make this better. My father didn't function that way. It was art first. That was what he understood. He's a very pure and fantastic human being that way, and completely honest. And in the playing, I think David Oistrakh, when they were friends, they spoke Yiddish together, and he said, my God, he never heard a violinist like this. And then my father sent him the Respighi Sonata that he recorded with Balsam. But two very, very supremely honest musicians appreciate one another. So I don't know if I answered your question.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, thank you. So,
I talk too much. Should I look here or look here?
Doesn't it?
Doesn't matter.
Yeah.
Okay.
You look at me.
Okay, that's even better. I didn't want to.
Yeah. So, can you tell us a little bit about the childhood? How your father presented, or as a father, was he your mentor? If he taught you, or, because many musicians know how hard to teach their own kids. It's almost impossible because kids do not accept you as a teacher. So how?
Yeah, it's an interesting question. I was very fortunate because before school each day, my father would give me a violin lesson, so half an hour. And when I first started out, I heard, and he either had the viola there or the violin in hand, and I play a little melody, maybe something from a Schubert, Ave pa-dim, pim, pi-dum. And then I would hear this fantastic string quartet with me, the quintet. And later I would go in the room alone and practice. What happened? Well, it happened so beautifully because he filled in the orchestra all the time, and it sounded so terrific. But you said something, is it hard to teach your own son? For the first 4 years, it was beautiful. It was beautiful. I was 5 years old, and till about age of 10, it was going beautiful, and he was always concerned with the bow arm. And I could tell, because he had the greatest bow arm in the world, oh my God, to watch his hands, it's like pure ballet. I loved watching my father's hands. They're just beautiful, beautiful. But when I put my paw on the string, at first it was very good position. And then, as you said, it's not so easy to study with your papa, so I went to a student of his who was a very good student, but you know, after a couple of months' lessons, he said, play something for me, and so I played, and he only looked at my hand, and I could see, oh my God, he didn't like it anymore. He just looked at me, and oh my God. And so he said, no more with the other teacher, come back. You have to leave now?
No. Just a couple minutes,
yeah.
we'll have finished.
You have to come back now.
Yeah.
So then, it wasn't for another year that he looked at my hand and the smile was there. So the form was everything for him. I'm going to tell you another thing. We have 2 more minutes?
We have more.
Okay.
I will just look.
About the broadness of this man, who he's my idol, and you can see that I'm kind of fanatic. He's a great human being, but very one of a kind. I knew since I was a baby I was going to be a viola player, violinist, violist, didn't matter, because he had the viola on the piano all the time, and what would happen, I was too big for the violin, so I would pick up his viola and play the same thing and say, you know, I think you're going to be a better violist. It worked that way. He was a terrific violist. Okay, I'm digressing. His father was a wonderful cabinet maker from Ekaterinslav.
Yekaterinslav.
It's near Odessa.
Yes, yeah.
Right. And he was a terrific cabinet maker. And every
Your
day,
father?
my father's father.
Oh, father. Okay.
And he would walk to, it was a very hard time for Jews at this time,
Yes.
very hard. And he would walk as a boy, 10 years old, to the apprentice, this very fine cabinet maker, because Grandpa had a wonderful ability to work with wood, like my papa would, the perfectionist. But he would walk by Klezmer, house of Klezmers, every day, and he was, oh my God, he loved that. And so the head Klezmer said, come on in. Isaac was his name. Come in, Isaac. So he came in, and he gave him a homemade violin. And so he was, my father told me, and my mother told me, he was terrific. He held the violin here, didn't read any music. And as a little boy, Oskala, he called him, he would sit out, behind the door while I was practicing. And no. But he said, my father adored his father, and he said, his first lessons, this is going to sound funny, but it's not really. His father, the cabinet maker, could cut a straight line without any pencil mark. So he's sewing from the back. And he said, he taught me as a little boy, the bow strokes start from here. And so it's the same when you're sewing, his father showed him. Okay, apropos of that story, flash forward 40 years. He was building the house that I was born in, built half of it. And he was known down at the lumber yard, where they buy the wood. There's that crazy, eccentric carpenter who's played the violin too. They didn't know. So at the time, he happened to be concertmaster of the Firestone Hour. The Firestone Hour was like Ed Sullivan's show. And so every couple of weeks they would feature 2 minutes of the greatest violin playing you've ever heard. Rondo Capriccioso in 2 minutes, and he would play some fantastic excerpt from Messiaen. And so the head of the lumber store, all of a sudden he was tired after work, and he put the television on and said, oh my God, that crazy carpenter. Oh, wow, he really plays the violin so well. The whole he went in the next time, and everybody said, wow, we saw you on TV, we didn't know you could play that violin. So, I mean, that's a little bit of the background. I have much more, but we're pressed on time.
And my last question, of course, related with the Leopold Auer, because this is what I'm doing. Every year Leopold Auer competition in St. Petersburg. We revoked this competition. The first one was in 1911, and
my father hated competition.
I know, I read about that. But the question is, okay, because of the Leopold Auer, I want to ask, did your father told you anything about Leopold Auer, how he studied with him? I know he studied with him when Leopold Auer came to the United States. Yeah, not
I think Dad was 8 and Auer was 80.
Yes.
That's what I know.
So how was their relationship, and if your father told you anything that he remembered from that lessons?
Well, first of all, it's interesting. Oh, he was a towering figure, an Auer, just by virtue of Tasha Seidel, Heifetz, Elman, Zimbalist, they're all, my God, you know, here comes a great figure. But there was a great respect, and it's interesting because Auer had all these incredible students, so he's not going to say, oh, well, his technique was so great. Of course it was so great, but so was Heifetz, so was, Elman and Seidel. But he said, it's a very interesting thing I find, he said that he loved my father, but he said, this man will be remembered for his extraordinary interpretations, because even at 8, 9 years old, he sensed the boy was doing something. And at this time, Leopold Stokowski was a great admirer of my father's. So he had him come and invited him. I think he played 70 times with the Philharmonic Orchestra and child concerts everywhere. And Stokowski said it's the greatest genius I've heard. But Auer was a formidable figure. I just have one figure relating to Auer. This will be interesting. Kind of a funny thing. When Dad studied with Zimbalist, who was one of Auer's greatest students, my father brought the Tchaikovsky concerto in for the lesson. I think he was 11 years old or 12 years old. And then it came to, Zimbalist loved my papa's playing, it was his greatest pupil. But it came to the cadenza, and my father played the original Tchaikovsky, bom bom bing bom 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 bom. And Zimbalist said, what's going on? You didn't play the Auer? You didn't play the Auer cadenza here? And my father said, as a little 11-year-old, well, Mr. Zimbalist, don't you think that Mr. Tchaikovsky knew better? And Zimbalist said, get out of here!
It's a great story. It's a great story and great example for the young generation. What I figure out, they somehow, at this time of the freedom and everybody can speak and the internet, and they scared to pronounce their idea. So since the Suzuki owned the systems, like they more kind of a copy of their teacher than produce something by themselves. So this is what I'm always telling to my students. First of all, you have to give me your idea, what you have in your mind about it. Yeah, so I think this is a great example that even at that time, you know.
Well, and you know what, it relates back to the question, why wasn't my father a household name? Number one reason is because of this. He didn't take any gaff from anybody. He thought something, bingo. Yeah. And if you think, oh, well, everybody says to do this, no. His greatest, the philosopher he loved most was America's great Henry David Thoreau. Did you ever read Thoreau? Walden Pond, about Thoreau, and to be, it's one of the greatest with Walt Whitman, Emerson, and Henry David Thoreau, and to be a nonconformist is everything to Thoreau. He's really, it's almost like Buddhist. And my father was so, and it was kind of a conflict. It was kind of a conflict because to make it in the music world, you have to, butter up this person. But Thoreau was, be your own person, be yourself. So in that sense, there was a conflict, but there was never any conflict with the music. It was one with the music. So he's a completely pure soul. That's what I have to say.
Thank you, Eric. You answer all my
Beautiful.
questions. It was
Yeah.
great.
Yeah, that's
Very
that's
natural.
pop stuff.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you
Thank you.
guys, thank you. Are you gonna eat something now? Maybe I'll
Yes.
watch you eat.